Welcome back, Nerglings. Today we're taking a look at Wargaming scenery and chaos terrain. But before we start, be sure to like, share and subscribe so you don't miss an update. Right, so scenery and terrain. Where to begin? I've been really inspired recently by several different blogs, White Dwarf articles and the Oldhammer community on Facebook. What I plan on doing with the pieces shown here is creating a consistent look that really evokes a strong chaos theme and, of course, an old school vibe. My goal for this scenery and terrain is to be able to create some fab scenarios and interesting photo shoots with my painted models. In an ideal world, replicating maybe a slice of the 80s and 90s in doing so. Before we get into what each piece is, I'd like to just cover what I view the differences between scenery and terrain. I would say that scenery is used in the background for photo shoots and can be made up of terrain pieces, but is predominantly not used in battles or games. Dioramas would certainly fit into this category. Terrain I class as something that you can use in your everyday games and needs to be the right scale for the game to aid in immersion, whereas scenery doesn't necessarily have to be. Let's get into the weeds and see what's cooking. Does that make sense? I don't know. You know what I mean. The first piece I bought was this fancy keep. It's roughly the right size to hold a few occupants and has some really nice features. In particular, I like the crumbling walls and the rock the castle is perched on. I'll mount it on a solid piece of lasered MDF and then sculpt up from there to blend the base into the model with rock effect. I haven't decided yet if I'll be dedicating each piece of scenery to a particular god and thus giving it a strong colour scheme, or simply having everything painted very similar in a putrid green colour and covering each piece in moss and lichen. I got this model from the local aquarium. It's made from resin and is supposed to go in a large water tank, so it's pretty robust. Of course, as it's actually kind of cheap in design and manufacture, it does have some flaws in the casting process, with some serious flash along the edges, and there is a mismatch between the mould halves on the base, which will need fixing too. Overall though, it's a great piece that will be super for anything from close-up photos to taking up some space in the background. Destroy a man's castle and destroy the man. The second piece of scenery is another castle that I picked up last weekend. Again, from the same aquarium. It's made from similar resin and has the same flaws in its design and casting, which are, for the most part, flash issues and a slightly misaligned base. As you can see, it has some nice spires and rooftops. However, I would say it's about 50% of the scale of regular Warhammer miniatures. To rectify this, I have a couple of ideas. Firstly, if it is to be used as scenery for pictures, then I will be able to make it look like it's further away than it actually is in photo shoots, due to the smaller scale. Secondly, I may cover it in Nerglings and just say it's a castle built by them for them, and thus the scale is correct. That could be seen as a bit of a cop-out, but it works just fine for me. The colour scheme I envisaged for this would be a nice green with some extra sculpted pieces in the roofs and on the base. A man will not invite you to his home on orders. On to the Wizard's Tower. I really like this kit and I was pretty disappointed when it went out of production. So when I saw one recently on eBay, I just had to snap it up. It has some cool skulls on the base and I plan on using it for the most part as a lofty background tower. Of course, it isn't complete as I haven't even started gluing it together yet, but I really like the style of the thing and I'm sure I can make it suitably dark and grimy. Again, it will be based on a lasered MDF base and I'll do some sculpting work to blend the model in. I would actually like to add some more rocky skulls to the base. I could do this with a press mould made from my rocky outcrop model that I've been working on recently. A castle is master of all it surveys. So, on to said rocky outcrop. This is another piece from the local aquarium. Pretty much the same detail as the previous pieces, although the cast seems to have been well aligned for this particular one, and there wasn't much flash. Strangely, I got this model home and then noticed that a piece of it had been smashed off in transit, making the base somewhat wonky, but that's nothing that can't be fixed with some modelling putty. I have filled the hollow inside the outcrop with some modelling clay, and I'll go over the gaps created by the shrinking of the clay with some filler before texturing the whole thing and gluing it to its base. I would like to put some LED lights inside it to give the skulls some eerie looking light effects, but this may be a bit too keen and may not actually look particularly Oldhammer enough for the look I am going for. Blessed are the dark corners of the world, as they harbour the things we dare not. As you can see, I've also included my feculent gnarlmore in this video, simply because it's a fun piece of terrain and would make a nice addition for photo shoots. In the future, I would like to build at least a couple more of them and also get some bare trees to mix in with them to make a mysterious forest for my beastmen to roam about in. As always, I have lots of plans and only one pair of hands, so I think that idea being realised may be a little way off at the moment. Mysterious is the man with no home to call his own. The final piece of terrain we're going to look at is the possessed windmill, made from an old water pump from my last car. The thing is super heavy as it's mostly metal and modelling clay, however I simply love the look of the demon in the door and have some fun ideas for making it look creepy and interesting, not least of which include trees growing out of the side of the building, sculpted bricks at jaunty angles, and of course plenty of signs of corruption such as boils, spots, and strange textures covering the walls. The main problem for this particular piece is the weight of the thing, so I hope to do less sculpting and more simply gluing old twigs to keep the weight down, but we will see. I may have to change of heart and just go all out sculpting mad on it, and it will end up weighing about 50 pounds. In other news, I plan on building a Chaos Castle out of an old hard plastic castle grayskull from He-Man. However, I seem to be having a bit of trouble getting my hands on one at the moment. My brother's, I believe, is either in my parents' loft or has unfortunately been taken to the charity shop. One way or another, it's unavailable, so I figure I may have to resort to buying one at a premium from eBay. Always a pain when you end up buying things you already owned or could otherwise have got your grubby mitts on. Recently, during my travels, I saw an awesome Polish castle which would look absolutely super as a keep in the near to middle distance during photo shoots. It was pre-painted in a murky granite colour with some nice weathering, or at least the box art led me to believe it was. I can't read Polish, so I'm not entirely sure what I was looking at. Again, another pipe dream I suspect, as I'm running out of room in the house at the moment, but who knows, I may rent a garage or something to start putting things in. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Which piece of scenery or terrain was your favourite and why? Be sure to comment, like and subscribe, and thanks very much for watching. Happy New Year's!